Good morning, those who've joined so far. We'll get started here in just a little bit. Good morning to those who've joined. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes, right at 10 Central. So just hold on one second. We'll get started here. Thanks for those who've joined so far. All right, everyone. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, and thank you for joining. My name is Brittany Spencer, and I am the Training and Accountability Coach here at Nexstar. I'm one of 8. Today we're going to be going through and reviewing summary of findings and some best practices. Right, a couple of housekeeping things that I just want to bring everybody up to speed on is I do have everyone muted, right, so we don't have any distractions in the background. We do have a chat feature. You can also raise your hand if there's any questions or concerns if you're not hearing something. But we will have some time at the end where we're going to be discussing, and if you have any questions, you'll have an opportunity at that point to be able to bring those up. So again, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. And I do have and am joined by a couple other TAP coaches on this call. So hopefully they'll be able to share with you guys some of their knowledge on the summary of findings. So let's get going. All right. So first off here, summary of findings. All right. The summary of findings is a coaching tool that's going to help you review your calls with your technicians for their continued improvement and growth. Right. And this is an accountability tool. It's what we call here at Nexstar one of the most important tools that your team's going to have, right? And we call it the most important tool because if we don't use this front of the tool truck, right, customers are less likely to allow us to use the tools that we have in the back of our truck, right? And that's what most technicians want to get to, right? But it is one of the most underutilized tools that we have as well. Right, and so if you've worked with me in the past, and I see a couple of you on here that I've talked with consistently, and if you've talked to me, you've probably heard me talk about this, right? And I call it the ABCs of behavior, right? And it's not new to Nexstar, but the ABCs of behavior is the A is the antecedent, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the behaviors that we have in the field and match those and link those to the results that we're seeing. So if you want to change the results that you're seeing, we want to be able to look and link it to what are the behaviors that we have in the field. So the A of the ABCs is going to be that antecedent. That's the thing that's going to happen before the behavior occurs, right? So if you think about it, you've got to give your team the training necessary in order for them to exhibit a behavior, right? If you think about the service system process and any of the Nexstar processes that we have, right? If we don't give them the skills necessary, they're not going to be able to demonstrate those, right? And they're not going to have the behaviors that we necessarily want, right? And so the antecedent is the thing that we have before the behavior. That's all the training that we do either in our shop weekly. That's our sending technicians off to training. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just technicians when it comes to behavior. Your customer service, your dispatch, any training that happens in your shop, right? And so the B of that ABC equation is going to be the behavior. That's the thing that the people in our organization, that's the things that they're doing and they're saying, right? And then lastly, we think about the C, right? Those are what we call the consequences. And naturally, probably what you've associate consequences with is negative, right? And those consequences, I like to link those more toward the accountability pieces that we have in our organization, right? And the summary of findings is a great accountability tool, right? And it's a way that if you're looking to change the results in your organization, this tool is a great way to do that, right? And we're able to link through these summaries some of those behavioral links that are happening and being able to tie them to the results that we're seeing, right? And so summary of findings, again, is just a coaching tool that we're looking for improvement and growth, all right? So when you're thinking about coaching toward your summary of findings, and we're going to talk about a couple of different aspects here, but we're thinking about solely coaching aspect, we want to make sure that we're consistent, right? We want to make sure that we're looking over our technician summary of findings daily, and we're reviewing those with the technicians weekly, right? So daily, you've got your service manager reviewing. I also, and I've seen and worked with different managers who are also debriefing with dispatch at the end of every day, right? In their checklist as they're going throughout and they're talking with the team, right? Making sure that they're filling out those summary of findings. And so one thing you guys might also, I'm going to point this out, you might in your shop call your summary of findings option sheets. For our purposes here today, I'm going to just refer to those as our summary of findings, but daily your service manager is looking at these summaries to see what's happening, right? You've got your weekly training reviews as well, right? So we're reviewing those weekly inner trainings, right? We're taking those behaviors and those results, and we're potentially doing some role play, right? We're looking at the summaries that we currently have. We're looking at and comparing what we want off of those summaries, and we're role playing for those results. Right, and then you also have your weekly one-on-ones that you're doing with the technicians that you're able to bring those summary of findings into as a review. Again, high level of accountability, right? And you can't coach what you're not seeing, right? So you need to make sure that you're inspecting what you expect, right? So if there's an expectation with the summary of findings, and we're going to talk about what some of those expectations are, but you need to make sure that you're inspecting those. And the summary of findings has to be a standard on every call, right? It's kind of like muscle memory. If you're not using it, you're not going to grow. And if your team's not doing that in their training weekly with your team, with your service manager in their one-on-ones, that muscle is not going to grow, right? And it's going to be something that's going to be a continuous struggle. All right, next on coaching, what we've got is we want to make sure that we're being specific. All right, so make sure we have copies of your technician summary of findings available, right, from the prior week, and you've got that correct example for comparison. So when you're thinking about your training, there's a couple of different ways that you can get them involved, but one way is you could have your technicians make a list of, you could have them form a group or pair up, right, and you could have your technicians make a list of everything that they think should be on a great summary of findings. Right? You can compile that list from the whole team. You can make a master list, and then you can do an exercise where you can compare it to a NextStar sample. There's a couple of different ways that you can get engaged. You can have the team star great examples of summaries from the prior week from technicians to review. You can make a competition out of it as well. But those are a couple of ways that you can use those summary of findings throughout the week. Right, and so what we're also doing is we want to make sure we're looking for specifics on those summary of findings related to the service system process. Right, so we want to make sure that we're using the customer language, right, that we're, this again is a part of the observations and findings section, right, we're using that customer language, right. I'm going to go back here. So we're using customer language. You're also bundling options for the electrical and plumbing side, or you're using the ABC approach for the HVAC, right? And if your team's really struggling with coming up with enough options, especially when it's on that plumbing and electric side, you're going to be able to explore that in the explore step of the service system process, right? And we want to see what are the questions that we're asking the customer if we're struggling with bundling those options and creating multiple options, right? And then lastly, we've got our technical findings from the thorough evaluation, right? So when you're thinking about coaching, you're looking at those observations and findings that we have with our team, is you're looking for the customer language in it, and we're also putting our technical findings, and that comes through the thorough evaluation in our explore step, right? So you've got a little sample here of some observations and finding there to the right, right? That's where, again, we're capturing that customer words and technical findings. And when you think of the technical and the customer side of things, the technical findings is going to be more focused on the product and the problem. It's focusing on the actual thing, right? And so the customer language, that's going to be those lifestyle questions, right? The customer, and when we're capturing customer language, that's focused on the customer's needs, wants, and frustrations. It's more about the person, right? The technical is about the product. The customer is going to be more about the actual person that we're dealing with, right? And so when you're thinking about summary of findings, a lot of times we think of it as only a presentation tool, right? But it's not just utilized at the present step, but it's also used while we're going through the explore step, right, in our thorough evaluation, right? As your team's doing that explore step, we've set the expectations, right? We've set the agenda with the customer. This is where you're inviting the customer to ask questions and where you're asking questions as well, right? You're using that qualifying language of, if I should notice anything that needs your attention, what would you like me to do? Right, and in that moment, if you've got any questions, and I'm going to have an opportunity to ask you questions, right, that's where you're able to have this opportunity to capture some of that customer language as well. right? Also, if you're not with the customer, say you've got, for example, a technician that's maybe going through a crawl space, right? That is an opportunity for them to have a moment to jot down what they've noticed, right, when the customer might not be with them as well. Because it's hard as we're going throughout all of the things with the entire system, right, to remember everything that we're noticing, right? That's going to need to be discussed with the customer, right? And so if we're jotting these technical findings as we're going, it's also allowing and showing the customer that you're empathetic toward their problem, right? You're genuinely listening to what's going on, right, with the questions that they have, right? That you're an expert in the fact that you're taking notes of everything that you're noticing as you're going, right? And so you're asking questions, right? That's showing that you're an expert, right? That you're empathetic and you're listening, right? Again, that we've got the 3 pillars of trust with Nexstar, right? We've set the expectations, right? We've set the agenda. We're asking questions, so we're showing them that we're an expert, and we're listening, right? We're empathetic to what their concerns are. So when we're talking about our observations and findings, right, we start to think about, again, these lifestyle questions. Again, technical being product-focused, customer and lifestyle questions being more person-focused, right, and customer-focused. Or it's not necessarily about what's important to us, but what's important to the customer. And again, we're still talking about our observations, right? And we're uncovering the wants, needs, and frustrations of our customer, right? So what are some of the benefits that the customer might be missing out? And if you had the pleasure of being able to go to Leadership Spotlight this year with Nexstar, we had this idea with Dr. Robert Cialdini. He spoke. He was phenomenal, right? And he spoke on this principle of scarcity, right? And scarcity, or this idea of fear of missing out, right? And this power of ethical persuasion, right? There's some videos on the Nexstar website. Highly recommend that you check that out with Dr. Cialdini. But what is the customer missing? What are the benefits of the product, right? What are the benefits as we're going throughout and we're asking the customer, what is something that they might be missing out in their home, right? And then we've got this little demonstration down here, this little image, right, of observations going straight to discussion, right? And if we're going from an observation straight to a solution, the perception could be that we're trying to make a quick sale, right? That might not be what our intentions are, but we have to put ourselves in the customer's seat, right? And what is the perception that we're coming across if we walk into a home, right, and we go straight to looking at the product, right, looking at the problem and going straight to a solution, right? Lifestyle questions, what we're missing if we're not as we're going through that observation or straight to a solution, what we're missing is the discussion in between, right? And lifestyle questions are that discussion. All right, it looks like we're back. Sorry about that, everyone. And I might just begin an error message and everybody can hear me, but I want to make sure that we don't have any issues going forward. So, perfect. All right, I'm going to continue on as if we've got everybody here. So, back to our lifestyle questions. These are just a couple of different samples of what's going on. I will let you know at the end of this, I will have my email available, and so I have more of a detailed list of some great lifestyle questions that you can utilize, but I just wanted to share with everybody a couple by trade. So when you're thinking about these lifestyle questions for HVAC, we're trying to make that emotional connection with our customers. So for HVAC, what do you love about your thermostat? When you're going through that thorough evaluation of the entire system and you get to that thermostat, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, what do you love about your thermostat? Or if you could change one thing about your thermostat, what would you? Right? And you'll notice that these are not yes or no answered questions, right? These are going to take a little bit of thought, right? Another one would be, where in the home do you notice maybe hot or cold spots, right? For plumbing here, we've got maybe who in the home gets stuck taking that cold shower, right? If you've got a dad with maybe 4 daughters and a wife, maybe he's stuck taking that cold shower at the end of the night, right? And you can start to see how asking that question could potentially offer you the opportunity to provide a solution for maybe a tankless water heater, right, or a larger water heater. It's not that we want to put them in something that they don't want or need, but we're giving them the information, right? We're making that emotional connection. Another great question that I love is, describe for me, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, what does that dream shower look like for you, right? For electric, where do you charge most of your electronic devices? All right, I know in my home I've got one room in my kitchen where I have a ton of my devices being charged, right? And there's an opportunity there for maybe a USB charger, right? So another one would be, maybe where in the house have you always wished that you had an extra outlet? So those are just a couple of sample questions that I have for you. Again, you'll have my email information at the end of this presentation. And I've got a sample list of some grapes by trade, and I'll be more than happy to share those with you. All right. Again, talking about lifestyle questions, we want to make sure we're stopping some of that technical jargon, right? And we get in this habit of, since we are that expert, right, and we do have the knowledge, sometimes our natural inclination is we want to just begin to offer up what we believe is the best solution right away, right? We do have where we want to help our customer as quickly as possible, right? And we do want to take care of their needs, right? But we want to make sure, again, that just like in that picture we had earlier, that we have that great conversation in between, and we are allowing them to ask questions and for you to ask questions as well, right? And what is that emotional connection for the customer? What can we do? So I want you to think about, all right, really quickly, what can you do, what can your team do to take this problem that we were called out, right, and take this ordinary and broken thing, right, or product, and take it from that ordinary and broken to ordinary and exciting or exceptional, right, as opposed to what we typically do if we're going straight to the problem, where we take it from ordinary to functioning, right? And ultimately, we do want to make sure that we're repairing and taking care of that need that we were called out for. But is there an opportunity, right, to take it from that ordinary and functioning to ordinary and exciting and exceptional, right? And again, it goes back to the type of questions that we're asking, right? So just to kind of summarize those and the lifestyle questions is, we're capturing the customer's words, right? We're linking the customer's words to the options that we've built, and then we're describing that option. Right, so if you're ever reviewing, and I see this quite a bit when I'm coaching, is you might be reviewing summaries with a technician, right? And you look at 1, you look at 2, you look at 3, maybe a couple of weeks go by, and you're starting to see a pattern, right? And you're starting to see where over and over the technician's kind of building this cookie cutter, right? Across the board, every customer for the most part has the same options. Right, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure, and some of that is because they don't feel empowered with the questions, right? They're not using this muscle, right, as frequently. And so when they're in that habit of being able to ask customer questions, we're able to customize our customers' wants and needs, right? And you'll start to see more and more of these broader spectrums between customers, right? And it helps by asking these questions, right, these lifestyle questions or open-ended questions, we're able to help the customer and to kind of unlock their imagination. So if you take back to the prior screen where we asked that question in plumbing, describe for me your dream shower, right? We're not just connecting and fixing the thing. We're able to connect their imagination to the thing, right? And maybe you have a customer that doesn't feel comfortable opening up, but maybe you have one where, okay, my dream shower is, I'd love to have this. I'd love to have it tiled. I'd love to have shower head that comes off, right? Just allowing them to dream, right? And that's going to be able to allow you to link those words to the options built, right? But if you don't have that link between what the customer said and maybe you do offer an upgraded shower, right, it feels like you're trying to sell them something maybe that they don't need, right? You get kind of that used car salesman feel, right? And that's not what we're about, right? We're about taking care of our customers great. And so an example that I have from my personal life is my son, right? He's got asthma, right? And before I came into the trades, I didn't understand or realize that there was a way in which that I could help my son breathe easier with his asthma, right? And have him to breathe easier, but also me to breathe easier, right? It was less of a worry for me. And by a technician coming into my home, asking me questions, being able to let me know the benefits of a particular product, right, and helping me to understand that this could be, right, a way in which my son had less issues with his asthma, whether through an air purifier or indoor air quality, whatever you guys call it, right? You can guarantee that I was going with that option, right? Because they made an emotional connection with my son having asthma to what I had a need and a frustration for, right? So again, think about, are we looking at, when we're looking at our summary of findings, when we're coaching them to them, are you seeing those customer words? Right? Are you seeing the technical findings, and are we making those links between what the customer's saying to the options that we're building? So perfect. So what I want to do for you guys here next is I want to share with you a couple of ways in which we build our options, right? And I'm going to do this for HVAC first, right? And then I'm going to head into what it looks like to build options for plumbing and electric. And we're going to do this pretty quickly. This is something that Nexstar does have some resources online. I'm going to point you in a couple of directions. But I want to give you guys some foundation, right? And when you're thinking of options, right, if we only have one option for a customer, it becomes this take it or leave it scenario, right? It's a yes or a no decision and not a consideration, right? So these options should be customized for each customer and their specific needs. But when you're thinking about the ABC option, right, and John Conway, Jim Hamilton have done quite a bit on this, but option A is going to be that immediate repair, right? That's that least expensive option, right? That's going to safely address what we were called out for, right? And if there are multiple items that it's going to take to get that system running, right, we're going to bundle that into one price, right? Because if that's what it takes to get the system up and running, that's the one price. That's the minimum repair that we have for that day, right? That option B is going to be the system restoration and enhancements. This is going to be everything included through going through some of those questions, right, as we're doing that thorough evaluation. Right, this is anything that's questionable, anything that might be an upgrade to their system, right? For example, this would be for HVAC where you would add in that IAQ product, right? When you talked with me in my home and found out that my son has asthma, right? And that was a frustration for me. This is where you would put that IAQ product, right? And it's all about our explore step. Again, we don't just have options for the presentation. This is for going throughout the explore step, right? This may be a big option, right? And this is where a customer may choose to do an option or not, and that's okay, right? This is what shows them what it's going to take to restore that system, right? And we're giving them the option, right? And we're having them to be a consideration where they don't have to make just a yes or no option by just listing out the repair, right? So again, going back to if we're going straight to the problem and we're only offering up that repair, right? You're putting yourself in a tough situation by only having a yes or no decision in front of the customer, right? And then lastly here for the ABC for HVAC, you've got your replacement option, right? This is where we're going to use language like it might be time to consider having a comfort advisor come out, right? Or if you have selling technicians, right, you've got some additional options ready to go, and are able to share that information with the customer. Right, and in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you guys what a sample option looks like, right, with the observations and findings, as well as what it's the presentation to the customer, right? So we're going to be able to link this very nicely. I'm just giving you the information right now. So that's HVAC. One really great resource that we have, and if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend you go for, is we have a wake-up call in our video series, and it's called the 3-option ABC system, right? And it's going to deep dive into this option A, B, and C for you. So if you haven't checked that out, if you haven't shared it with your team, write that down. I highly recommend it, and get some discussion around that. So next, all right, so next we're going to talk about your bundled plumbing and electric options, right? So for plumbing and electric, this is going to be a bundle. And the great thing about bundles is it gives you something to say no to and not no to you, right, or not no to your technicians, right? So again, if your team, when you're reviewing the summary findings, or if this is something new and you haven't reviewed in the past and you're going to go forward doing, if you start to notice that your team's struggling, right, in building options, right, and building multiple options, 4 to 6, right, start to look into what's happening in the explore step of the service system process and what questions or discussion is the technician having with the customer, right? So option 1, this is where you're going to take everything from your observations and findings, right? And this is your dream big option. This is not necessarily that option where we're trying to match the customer's budget. This is where we're giving everything that they said that their needs, wants, frustrations, everything they wish they ever had, right? The option 2, so again, we're going to try to get to 4 to 6 options on this bundle, right? Option 2 is where we're just reducing one non-essential item, right? Again, it's about giving the customer that option so that they have a consideration, and we're customizing this to the customer, right? And this is going to vary from customer to customer. It can be just as easy or as simple as reducing maybe a warranty. Or say you were called out, for example, in a plumbing would be, maybe you were called out to repair a toilet, right? And maybe the first option would be to have a brand new toilet completely replaced, right? And option 2 might be actually repairing that option, right? Or reducing the warranty on that actual replacement from option 1. Right, and then option 3 through 6, right? That's where we're just continuing to reduce those options, right? And we're getting them to the bare minimum of what it's going to take to get that product or that problem back up running safely, right? So that last option should be the bare minimum, what we were called out there for. All right. So again, if you're struggling with building options, look at what questions are being asked and what's going on in the explore step. So again, like we talked about with HVAC, great video Julian Scadden does, wake up call on bundling up, right? And what that looks like, goes a little bit deep dive into these 6 different options. And there's more than just that. That was one that I'm recommending for everyone. So take a look and utilize that in your training, right? So a couple of best practices when we're looking at our summaries, right? And our solutions is making sure, and again, I'm going to show you guys, I'm a very visual learner, and so you're going to see what this looks like here in just a minute, but make sure that we're writing our warranties in the center of the page and we're circling them, right? That can be a big buying decision for our customers, right? If you put in front of me a couple of different options, right, and there's a big difference between maybe the repair option and getting a comfort advisor out, right, or your selling technician to quote a unit, right, that warranty might be a big determining factor. If that repair is only warranted for the next 90 days, right, or the next 60, whatever your warranties may be, I want to get through the rest of the summer, right? I don't want to have to be worrying as a homeowner, is this unit going to last me, right? And so that can help in that buying decision that the customer has, right? We also want to make sure that we're using the word investment instead of cost, right? Investment implies that we're going to get a return, right? And so whether you write that out or if it's in the language that we're using when we're presenting to the customer, we want to make sure it's a subtle little change, but it's got a big meaning behind it, right? So discuss that. Also, round your prices, right? If that's an option, round your prices to the nearest dollar, right? Avoid dollar signs or commas or decimals. It's just neat, it's clean, it's simple, it's easy to follow for our customers. And make sure that we're writing legibly, right? I know that technicians sometimes struggle with this, but we want to make sure that it's presentable to the customer. And I know a lot of you might be on ServiceTitan. I was in my shop. We utilized ServiceTitan for about 5 years. And so what I found was, and I know this is one of those areas that people kind of differ on, right, in the field, but I'm for paper summary of findings, right? I utilized the electronic version for a while, and I started to see some steady declines in my conversion rate, right? And when we switched back to the paper because of our Nexstar coach, right, we were able to see some of those pickups coming back around, right? And that I've heard Jim Hamilton say this, the iPad is for the back office, paper summary of findings is for our customers, right? And so I link it back to my grandmother. She writes me every holiday, right? She still does, right? I'm a grown adult and she still writes me a handwritten letter, right? And when you think about that for our customers, it's more connected to the emotional side, right? We've put in the time, we've put in the effort, it's connected to you, right? The iPad can sometimes be cold, right? And so we want to make sure that we're writing legibly when we do write out those summary of findings. So next, what I want to do here is we're going to jump into visibly what it looks like to have an HVAC option and a plumbing or electric option, right? So this is a sample HVAC, right? So you're going to start to see a couple of things here first, right? The first thing being we're going to look at our observations, right? So I want you to look at what is the customer language that we're seeing, what some of the technical findings, right? And so we'll just go through this really quick. Observations being and before I dive into that, you can also utilize these in your training throughout the week, right? Use these observations. Have your team build out a sample finding sheet of what they would present to the customer based on these observations. It's a great training tool, right? And so for these observations, right, noise started a couple of weeks ago. It keeps getting worse. Their son has severe allergies, and it's worse when they're in the home, right? That probably comes from not just observing, right, and going to the actual product of the problem. That comes from a conversation that technician had with the customer, right? Dust is building on the returns. The system's pretty noisy when it's on. Again, that's probably something that the customers let them know as they're going throughout the Explorer. The kids' room upstairs too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. Obviously, that's not something that a technician's going to be able to pick up right away from being in the home for the time that they are, right? But they probably do see that that flame sensor and igniter is pretty well worn and corroded, and then it squeals a little bit, right? So you're seeing this nice mix of customer language and technical findings, right? And then we see the ABC after the fact. Now, if you're doing a maintenance check, you might not have any immediate repairs needed on that call. And if that's the case, that's okay. We would just write in that, no repairs needed at this time, right? And then you're starting to see some of the things that we pointed out. We've got the warranty circled. It's in the middle of the page. We've got the word investment. You don't see any of those dollar signs. Or you've got the nice round numbers right there for you. You've got your system restoration, that option B, and enhancements, right? That's kind of a la carte there a little bit, right? And we've got the total price broken out with a nice little finance monthly cost as well, right? And then lastly, you've got your system update there in option C, right? That's where you're going to use that language. It may be time to have a comfort advisor come out and talk about a more efficient system, right? And if that's not the case, if that's not needed, right? Maybe you're at a 4-year-old unit, right, and you don't have any issues, just mark through that, right? And as you're thinking about, as you're doing maybe your annual or biannual maintenance checks, right, there is going to come a time where that system update is going to be needed, right? And if for years we've been crossing through that, and now it's time, right, that it's time to consider having a comfort advisor come out and talk about that more efficient system, right? They're going to know that, okay, this company's taking care of me, and it genuinely is time in their expert opinion to have that taken a look at, right? So mark through that, though, if it's not needed. It's a nice little thing to be able to visibly show our customer. All right, so that's a little sample that we have for the ABC options for HVAC, right? And then, so next we're going to jump to a specific plumbing option. Now, this is going to be plumbing language, but the electrical option is going to look similar. All right, it's still going to have the 4 to 6 options, still going to be capturing our observations at the top. It's just going to have some different language in it. All right, so again, observations is key when it comes to your coaching with your team. All right, are they following the service system process? Are they taking what the customer wants, right? Wants, needs. Are we capturing some of that customer language? All right, so we see that the garbage disposal is jammed. That might be a technical finding. It's a 1/2 horsepower unit. Some customer language is going to look like they use the sink and the kitchen a lot, right? The sink's shallow and the faucet is old. Again, the water heater is old and it constantly runs out of hot water. That's probably a frustration that the customer has. And you'll see on option 1, again, that's that dream big option. Because that customer is able and running out of that hot water, we're able to get them into potentially that tankless system, right? We're able to give them that premium kitchen sink that they've always dreamed about, right? That they've described, right? They've got that pull-out faucet, an extra deep sink, right? A 1/2 horsepower garbage disposal, which is what we were called out for, right? With the total investment broken out by a monthly fee. We've got a warranty circled, and we're ready to present to the customer. When it comes to your options when plumbing and electric, when your technicians are presenting this option to the homeowner, we want to make sure they're presenting option 1, right? Going through that thoroughly. And then we tell the technician to shut up after that, right? Give our customer the availability to read through the remaining options and to choose what's best for them, right? And as they have questions, to be able to ask, right? The toughest part sometimes can be just to be quiet and to let the customer read through and to make that decision, right? That works best for them. Again, I used to tell this to my team quite frequently. We're not in a high sales pressure environment. What we're in is we're in the information game of giving the customers what they want, they need, and are frustrated. I know I've said that a lot, but I'm very passionate about it, right? We want to make sure we're taking care of the customers, but we don't know what the customer's potential needs might be beyond what we were called out if we're not asking those questions, right? So do some training around what's some questions that we can ask. How can we go through and get those observations from the customer? Role play weekly, and you're going to build that muscle memory and you're going to build that skill set. All right, so really quickly, I want to recap on a couple of things we talked about. Mastery comes through repetition, right? It's a skill that has to be developed. There's not any one person, myself included, that's been able to jump in front of a customer, right, and be able to do this perfectly, right off the bat. It comes through repetition. It comes through you doing your ride-along as a service manager, right, and seeing what's happening in the field. We've given them the skills necessary, right? We talked about those ABCs, right, and the A being the antecedent, the thing that's happening prior to the behavior. We've given the team the skills to be able to demonstrate. Now when we're doing our ride-along, right, we're seeing the degree to which that skill is being mastered, right? And then in our one-on-ones, we're reviewing what we're seeing with our technician and what they're offering to our customers, right? So it's something that we have to develop. And, right, the summary of findings creates results because it's customer-focused, right? We're focusing on the customer's health, their comfort, their safety, their convenience, and their happiness, right? And so that's the great thing about what we do is we get to take care of our customers and put them into great situations that's going to make them happy for years to come, right? And we're going to be that company of choice that they go with every time. So that's a quick recap about what we talked about. Before we get into questions, I just wanted to let you guys what's coming up next in terms of the training and accountability tap-in live schedule. So what we've got next is Friday, June 7th, so put on your calendar, 10 a.m. Central. We're going through the ride-along process, right, and some best practices, right? So this is going to link up very nicely with some of those accountability pieces, those consequences pieces of behavior, right? So we're reviewing our summaries, we're looking at ride-alongs, and we've already gone through our one-on-ones, right? Those are some of those key accountability aspects of what's happening in the field. So if you've joined us today, feel free to join us on June 7th as we talk more about ride-alongs and what that looks like, and making that commitment to that process. So with that being said, I am going to see if I can unmute everybody here. So give me just a second. And I'm going to allow everybody to have a moment to ask whatever questions you might have. And this is also going to be an opportunity. I've got a couple other TAP coaches on here as well, to be able to share any insights and successes that they've had. So, all right. Did that work? Do I have any brave souls out there that want to? All right, that didn't work. So I'm individually, oh, here we go. We got some views. Now just give me 1 second. I'm having to unmute everybody individually here. And we've got some background noise. So if you do have, if you're not have a question, if you could just mute your phone, that would be perfect. And I promise I'm getting everybody unmuted here. But do I have any questions or anybody that'd like to comment or add?
We got on board, so told him I would call him first. So, and I had to put the number for his cell phone in the, the summary. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good to me.
All right. I think I've got everybody unmuted, so I've got a couple of people, sounds like they're talking.
What kind of color you're going there?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think it could be to Mr. George's house?
All right.
Good content.
Awesome. Well, guys, if nobody has any questions, if you do want, say, for instance, that lifestyle questions, that list of some sample lifestyle questions, again, that's not going to be the extent of everything that and all the questions that we can ask our customers, but it's a nice starting point. And so if you'd like that list, feel free to write down my email address there or get in touch with your TAP coach. And if you're not sure who your TAP coach is, your business coach will be able to help connect you there as well. But you've got my email address, and I appreciate everybody joining. You guys have been a great audience.
Brittany?
Yeah, who I got?
Robert Word in Memphis. And
Hey, Robert.
I just wanted to let you know, awesome job.
Thank you. And guys, Robert's one of our training and accountability coaches as well. So he works with Mr. Jim Hamilton.
I had the older style box. Yeah, and they tried to move me from that to the newer one.
All right, well, everyone, I'm going to leave this up for a while if you need to capture my information. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing everyone on June 7th.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine. Wow. Yeah, I mean, what, you can barely put a hot water tank in there. Wow. I bet. Yeah, we won't have to do that much pro pressing though, because we're gonna keep the weight of that right now. The union? Yeah.
That should have been your name.